What's up, guys? Curtis Riggleman here. I'm gonna tell you guys a story today about the craziest motherfucker I've ever known. This was one of my closest friends. He passed in 2010. His name was Christopher Paul Joy. And this motherfucker stood 6'2", and he was about 240, lean. And he was a bad motherfucker, dude. He was a mean motherfucker. It was scary as hell going anywhere with him because you never knew what he was looking at or what he was thinking. In this particular story, Chris fought all the time. Chris loved to fight. He would fight just about weekly. This particular story, I witnessed him knock out 10 people in one setting. And I don't mean like knocked down. I mean they were unconscious until we left. He had one-hitter power in both hands. In fact, rarely if he hit somebody with either hand were they left conscious. This particular night, and before I get started, I realize a lot of you are not going to believe this, and I don't know if I would believe it if I didn't witness it myself either. But if anybody knew Chris and knew who he was, this is not a hard story to believe. Chris was one of the scariest people that probably ever walked the earth. And he just happened to be one of my closest friends growing up. This particular night, we went to a celebration of one of his actual close friends. I barely knew the guy, but I was a ride along with him. Chris and I and about 4 of our friends and our wives and girlfriends. So there's a group with women of about 8 of us. And we go to this celebration. His partner is actually leaving state, and he's going to be leaving in a couple of days, so they're having a large party tonight. Now, his friend lived in a side of town that was notorious for the gangs, the Bulldogs. And he had become friends with a lot of these Bulldogs in the neighborhood, even though he was white. Most Bulldogs are Mexican. He had became friends with all these people because he lived in the same neighborhood. Well, as we're having this party, this backyard starts filling up with all the Bulldogs from the neighborhood. Now, we're all cordial, but this is still a little uncomfortable. At this point, there's the group of us, about 8 of us, and we're in a little section by ourselves. His friend who were there celebrating, you know, he's hosting a lot of people, so I'm not even sure where he's at. And this backyard has filled up with about 60 gang member Bulldogs. And I know Chris, and I know already this shit is gonna get bad. Well, one Bulldog walks in who stood about 6'5". Now, Chris would fuck you up just because you're taller than him. I watched him do this several times. Just because somebody was taller than him, he'd beat their ass for it. So I knew right away when this guy walked in, this was gonna be trouble. This guy literally stood about head above everyone in the backyard. Everyone in the backyard, it was like even, and then his head was above everyone. So I knew this was going to be trouble. So one of our partners that was with us comes back from taking a piss or wherever he was at, and he tells Chris, "Do you see that tall guy over there?" Of course, Chris sees him, and he says, "He just told me to get out of my way or he's going to cornhole me." Whatever that means. But I knew right then this shit is about to go down. And I go, motherfucker, man, why did you have to come back and tell Chris that? So I said, I've been drinking beer all night. We're all partying. I go, let me take a piss real quick before this goes down. I walk around the corner, I take a piss. I walk back around the corner. They're all in the street already. I walked over to the street, which is separated by a fence. So I walk around the fence. As I walk around the fence, Chris is in the air and he hits a guy with a Superman punch. This guy hits the ground and he slides underneath the truck. Now this truck is against a fence and there's about a 5-foot gap between the two. Now when I walked around the corner and he hits this guy, this is already number 3. The 6'5" dude is laying on the ground unconscious, and so is one of his partners. He just knocks out number 3. This guy hits the ground because Chris was in a running motion. This guy hits the ground and literally slides underneath the truck. About 20 bulldogs rush Chris at the same time, and they rush him into this corner between the truck and this fence, and you can't even really see him. All of a sudden you hear him scream, and he stands up and he starts blasting his way out of this like tunnel that he's trapped in. He hits one guy with a right hand, this guy falls. Hits another guy with a left hand, this guy falls. He drops 4 people and walks his way right out of this fucking corner. This is like shit that you wouldn't believe in a movie. He walks his way out of this corner. He runs and jumps onto the top of the fence, and he's getting ready to dive into a pile of about 10 people. I grab his pant leg and I'm like, Chris, we gotta go, we gotta go. And he's kicking my hand off. Once Chris goes psycho, he goes fucking psycho. Okay? He says, they got Chrissy, which is his wife. I go, no, they don't, bro. She's fine. She's with me. Let's go, let's go. Right then, a car pulls up, slides, comes sliding up. It's a Buick Regal. He's sliding the tires right behind us. Chris jumps over my head, and he runs full steam at this car. The driver door flings open. Somebody jumps out from in the back seat, jumps out. Chris kicks him right in the stomach with a full steam run. It just kicks him right back into the car. As he kicks him into the car, another guy walks around the Regal, and he has a pipe in his hand. And he hits Chris right across the face, right across the side here. Chris drops to his knee. There's so many people surrounding this thing. I mean, you can't even get to it. We're just all, it's almost like everybody is just watching Chris do this work. And you can't get to him. There's literally 60 people surrounding his car. And he hits Chris with a pipe. Chris drops to his knee. The guy swings up with the pipe again. And my heart just drops. I'm going, motherfucker, you know. And Chris comes up with an uppercut. Hits this guy with an uppercut. He grabs this guy by the ears almost. Grabs him by his head. And he starts kneeing him in the face against this car. This guy's completely unconscious. His body is limp. And Chris is just crushing his face in with his knees. He's gonna kill him. The only thing that saved this guy from dying right then is the guy that he kicked into the car jumps out of the passenger side of the car and takes off running. Chris drops this guy and takes off running after this guy. This guy does a full circle and he runs back and he's screaming at the driver in the car, go, go, go. And he jumps onto the hood of the car and he's hitting the window and he's going, go, go, go. The driver puts it in drive and Chris is running full steam to this car. Chris dives through the passenger window and hits this person and knocks him out cold, and his body's laying over. It's actually a female. It's a chick that tried to put in gear. Chris runs, hits her, knocks her out cold. She's laying over the driver's door. He gets back around. He grabs this guy by the head and he starts beating his face into the windshield. The car is actually in gear and it's barely rolling. And Chris is just pounding this guy's face into the windshield. Right then, the cops come around the corner. Chris calmly looks at me, almost as if his heart rate went all the way back down to fucking 60. Calmly looks at me and goes, we better get out of here. Let's go. Okay? We get in my truck. We start to drive away. Chris has a welt across the side of his head that's sticking out 3/4 of an inch. And he looks at me, and I'm just quiet. I've seen Chris fuck up a lot of people, but I've never seen anything like this. And I'm quiet, and Chris just looks at me, and he goes, one of those guys hit me harder than I've ever been hit in my fucking life. He goes, that guy might hit harder than me. And I go, bro, he hit you with a fucking bar. You don't feel that welt across the side of your head? He rubs his head and he goes, motherfucker. He goes, I thought that fucking guy hit harder than I did. This whole time I'm thinking, that guy hits harder than me. I'm like, Chris, you're something else. He's completely calm. And he says, let's stop by the gas station and grab some beer for the ride home. We pull into the gas station, get some beer, and we go home as if nothing happened. This type of shit Chris did all the time. This is not normal. This is not something that just happens to him. If you didn't bring it up, he wouldn't even tell you about it. This was just normal life for this guy. Chris, I have a lot of Chris stories. If you guys want to hear some more, let me know. This was the craziest motherfucker I ever known, and I don't think he possessed the emotion of fear, because I've never seen him afraid of anything. And this was the craziest shit I ever saw.